Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about Sunak and about the local elections, and I'd like to talk a little bit about crime, which is something I think we should be concerned about. Now, the local elections, as expected, were a complete and utter disaster for the Tories, but nonetheless, Sunak came bouncing back, saying that the line I think at the moment is that if you vote for anybody else, you can end up with a hung parliament, as though that would actually be worse than what we've got at the moment. And so he's going to soldier on. I think he's proved his credentials as being a complete and utter loser time and time again. Nonetheless, no one's going to move against him just yet. I think the Tories felt they had a choice of either becoming a worldwide laughingstock by getting rid of him and having a sixth Prime Minister in as many years, or resigning themselves to certain defeat by sticking with him. And so this miserable little man is just going to go chipping around all over the place, telling everybody how everything is going to be wonderful. And in the meantime, the vicious, nasty Harridan, spitting her venom, braver man is on the sidelines, talking about the party must go to the right, must go much further to the right. How far she wants to go, God knows. She wants to become a full-blooded fascist, I think, but a truly horrible woman. And of course, she's got quite a few followers within the Conservative Party. I don't think she would ever understand that the British electorate will never, whatever they'll do and however stupid they may be at times, are never ever going to elect an extreme right-wing party. So anyway, it's lose on with Sunak, and his absolute focus on the small boats seems to trump everything else. The economy and national health, everything is all subordinate to sending a few people to Rwanda, and they're even claiming now that scheme is now up and running because a person was sent to Rwanda, a person who was paid to go there, £3,000 to go there, and who, as soon as they arrived, disappeared. And you think, I mean, if they do ever send any plane loads out there, do they actually think anybody's going to stay there? Of course, they'll all disappear. That guy who was paid £3,000, he's probably on his way back to Calais right now. He's probably coming back to the UK. I mean, the whole thing is so ridiculous, and it's going to be so embarrassing, and it can never, ever work in such a way as to make any difference to Sunak's prospects. And in the meantime, whilst he's focused on all this, on the little boats, the economy continues to be an absolute disaster area. The World Bank last week said that next year, per capita income in the UK is going to be less than that in Poland. And I was thinking back to when the Poles first came here 20, 30 years ago, and how poor they were and how they came to work hard and send money back to Poland. And now we're going to be even poorer than them. And we'll be sending British workers over to Poland like Auf Wiedersehen Pet and sending money back here, I expect, before long. Yeah, we're just going down and down and down, whilst the government just creates chaos and obsesses about little boats. Stephanie Flanders, the chief economist at Bloomberg, she was saying also last week, she said that the poorest fifth of the population in this country are now poorer than almost anywhere in Eastern Europe, and that they'd be better off if they were living there. I mean, it's... there are people who will go on denying it. There are people I read in my comments who still think that Brexit was a good idea because we got back sovereignty, wrenched it back from the wicked EU. But I mean, denying that Brexit is anything other than a complete and utter disaster is just absolutely crazy. What caught my eye in some of the comments, and a couple of the comments I received last week to last week's video, was one in particular which said, we stopped visiting London for shopping trips due to the daily stabbings. Now, I don't think there are daily stabbings, but I think there are quite a lot of stabbings. In fact, I think there are really quite a shocking number of stabbings. And I looked into the figures for last year. And there were, according to the police, in terms of recorded offences involving knives, 49,489 last year. There were 244 knife murders, and of those, 78 were people under 25, and 10 of them were people under 16, I mean children. and I mean, it's never been like this before. And the publicity about these stories, it doesn't just stay with us. I mean, the whole world reads about how we're becoming a country that's not safe. And I'm sure this particular commenter is not the only person who says, well, let's not go to London. If you've got children, no, because there's so much violence there. And you see, if you watch Instagram, you watch YouTube, you see all the time films of gangs fighting in the streets. And I think it's partly the fact that they can get away with it now. You know, your chances of being caught and being punished for crime these days are so low. You know, if you're a burglar, your chances of being caught and convicted are less than 5%. And people know this, and people are desperate. I mean, a lot of people think that life is very unfair, particularly young men who can't get jobs and so on. And I think it's something we should be concerned about. I mean, we are all really quite vulnerable. I mean, you know, if a young man comes up behind you with a knife, I mean, that's it. You give him everything you've got, and you be lucky to get away with your life. And the way in which this sort of descent into crime, or this growth of crime, is most visible, I think, is in shoplifting. Last year, and I feel that's a staggering statistic, but last year, apparently, according to the police, there were 16.7 million incidents of shoplifting. And it's a staggering amount. I mean, we keep hearing about firms like John Lewis and the big supermarkets saying how they've got a real problem with shoplifting. But that was double the year before. So an awful lot of people suddenly realise that you haven't got any money, you can't afford to eat, just go and nick some stuff. And it's said that the police will never even entertain a case where the amount stolen is less than £200. And you see these films of these, you see it all the time, these gangs of young lads, they go there with the hoodies on and the masks, and they just take whatever like off the shelves, and usually it's expensive alcohol. And the staff just stand by and look, and if there's a security guard, he'll stand by and watch, and they go out with what they want. I mean, it's just so easy, and they know they're not going to get caught. And of course, the reason staff do nothing is because they don't want to take a risk, because and they're told not to take a risk. And the security guards, the guy who stood at the doorway in a navy blue uniform with silver buttons all over it, he's not going to intervene, because he's told by the firm, the security firm that employs him, don't get involved, because if you should try and apprehend a thief and he becomes injured in whatever altercation ensues, we'll be sued. In other words, the thief will sue the security firm. So it's an absolute free-for-all. And you think something has to be done about this. You know, it's not going to get better on its own. And so you would really look to the police, but there again, I mean, I'm sure they're really hard working, most of them. I'm sure they've got all sorts of difficult things to do, but when crime is expanding so quickly, it's pretty important that something is done. And when you look at examples of what the police are doing, I know these are probably extreme examples, but there's that. As we all know, there are 12 policemen. For the last 2 or maybe 3 weeks, 12 of them have been looking into, investigating whether or not Angela Rayner put the wrong address on a form about 10, 15 years ago, whereby as a result she might have failed to pay £2,000 or £3,000 in capital gains tax. I mean, Nadeem Zahawi, when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, he suddenly found, lo and behold, he'd failed to pay £3.5 million in capital gains tax. There was hardly any publicity about it. He wasn't even censured for it. It was just one of those things that we'd forgotten. And yet the police are all piling in on Angela Rayner. There was that case a couple of weeks ago of a lady called Trudy Warren, a very nice lady. She went and held up a sign outside the court saying, jurors, you have an absolute right to acquit a defendant according to your conscience. This was back in April 2024. Just held up a sign. She was arrested for it, and she was prosecuted, and eventually she went to court. And of course, the judge was sensible and just threw it out. But she received an indictment before the court case, which was 133 pages long. Now, I don't know how many lawyers would have been involved in drawing up that 133-page indictment, but is that a proper use of time? And this is probably going on everywhere. It's just easy, just, this old biddy, she's holding up a sign, let's go for it, let's try and dig up some law she might have broken. And the thing that, something else I saw last week, somebody showed me, which is really, really just amazing. This, and I have to thank a guy who's got a YouTube website called Clown World YT. He found an advert posted by the Warwickshire police force, and it was for somebody called a diversity officer. No, I have no idea what a diversity officer does, but I don't think they're solving crimes. But anyway, diversity officer. And they were offering £63,000 a year, which is quite a lot of money, plus a pension, of course. And so he put in a freedom of information request, and he said, whatever people you're employing on diversity, equality and inclusion. And they sent him a list. And this is the list. Warwickshire Police. These are people they're employing. There's a positive action sergeant. He gets between 49 and 51,000. There's a diversity, equality, inclusion coordinator who gets between 37 and 39,000. There's a diversity, equality and inclusion manager who gets between 47 and 52,000. There's an equality and engagement officer who gets between 37 and 39,000 pounds. There's a police race action plan advisor who gets between 58 and 63,000. There's a diversity, equality and inclusion learning and development manager who gets between 37 and 39,000 pounds a year, all with pensions, of course. And then there's a diversity, equality, inclusion focused PCSO who gets a mere 24 to 27,000 pounds a year. 400,000 odd pounds they're paying out there and employing 6, 7, 8 people on diversity, equality and inclusion. Now, I'm sure all that is very important, but is that a priority? I bet if you commit a burglary in Warwickshire, you won't. You phone the police, nothing's going to happen. You're never going to go to court. If you nick stuff, if you mug somebody, no, they haven't got enough evidence. I heard a story, an absolutely terrible story last year. Somebody I know who had a nephew who was walking along a road one day, one evening in South London, and a car drew up and bundled him in the back of the car, put him in the middle, took all his clothes off, got his phone and said, access your bank account, and they presumably got some sort of dark web bank account. Anyway, they made him transfer all the money, and they said, we want more. I think he only had £1,000 or something. And they said, they had a knife at his throat all the time, and they said, do you know anybody else? And he said his mother, and he had to phone his mother, and she transferred £3,000. And then after that, they drove him out into the country, and they just kicked him out, poured water all over his clothes and threw them at him. And that was so easy. And they got £3,000 or £4,000. I really don't know how the bank accounts work, but they somehow did. And they could just, they said to him throughout the ordeal, they said, if you don't do what we do, what we tell you to do, we'll stab you, we'll kill you. And I suppose they could well have done that. But we're dealing in dangerous times. And I think there has to be a lot more focus of the police on finding ways of catching people. I'm sure it's very difficult, and I'm sure they are short-staffed. I'm sure they're short of resources, all the rest of it. But if they're spending all their money on diversity, equality and inclusion coordinators, it's no wonder. But it's something that concerns me. I'm getting on a bit, if I'm walking on the road and some lad comes up to me with a knife, that's it, I'm finished, there's nothing I can do about it. I couldn't fight back, and I think there are an awful lot of people like that, and things like housebreaking and burglary, and several of my neighbours have been burgled, and the police don't even come. They give you a number. And that's it. It's something I think we should be very worried about. But it's all as a result of the economy doing badly, and it's all being under pressure, and particularly poor people. There's this huge rich-poor divide where poor people are getting squashed and squashed and squashed. And those are the people, of course, who the Prime Minister is going to focus on. The government is going to focus on people who might have been getting too much in benefits, and people who might be disabled but could really work if you poke them. It's all a dreadful mess. Anyway, that's what I think about it. If you watched this far, thank you very much indeed. And until next time, bye for now.